मैं किसी के पास बैठ भी नहीं सकती और जब मैं उठती हूँ बार बार निशान चेक करती हूँ।
घर में एक ही वॉशरूम है तो पैड चेंज करने में मुझे शर्म आती है।
मुझे पैड को कचरे में छोड़ना पड़ता है हर बार।
She may not understand what she's going through. She just needs to know you do. Over 2 million girls will get their first period in lockdown. Your daughter or sister could be one of them. Talk to her. Tell her.
It's normal. It's just a period.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, after that wonderful message, it is now time to move on with the proceedings for the day. Today's two schools, the Heritage School, Vasant Kunj, is going up against the Oberoi School of Integrated Studies, Oasis, Dehradun. The topic today. This house believes all countries should take equal steps to combat global warming. I'll repeat. This house believes all countries should take equal steps to combat global warming. Here are the two teams from the Heritage School, Vasant Kunj. Ms. Pooja Roy Chaudhary is the adjudicator. Nikhil is speaking for the motion while Zaina speaks against. From the Oasis, Dehradun, Mrs. Natasha Nandi Batla is the adjudicator. Tarana would be speaking for the motion and Anshulika would be going against. Participants, if you could please switch on your cameras, we would love to see you. I can see Anshulika. There you are, Zaina. Thank you for joining. I can see you, Tarana. Nikhil, we are waiting for you. Nikhil, I hope you're around. Yeah, I can see you now. Great. So this is the order we'll go in. Nikhil speaks first for the motion, followed by Anshulika, who will go against the motion, followed by Tarana speaking for the motion, and then Zaina against the motion. I hope I got that right. Who's speaking for and who's speaking against?
Yes.
Perfect. Judges, can you please confirm that you have access to the scoring sheets?
Yes, I do, Shubhayu.
Thank you, Meghna.
Thank you.
Yes, I do, Shubhayu, sir.
Thank you so much, Pooja ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got it. I've got it here.
Thank you so much, ma'am. All right. So now that we're all set, Nikhil, we are going to start with you. Before we start the debate, we would love to know you a little bit better. What are your hobbies? What do you do when you're in your spare time? Which class you're in, your favorite subjects, anything you would want to tell us really.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Nikhil and I'm from the Heritage School, Vasant Kunj. And my favorite hobby is to debate and MUN. And I just play with my, I just play on phone when I'm free, like when I have free time.
All right, Nikhil, the gamer and the debater. If you're ready with your arguments, we will start your time now.
When the well is dry, we will know the value of water. Good morning, good afternoon, adjudicator, my worthy opponents, my fellow teammates, and to one and all present here. Today, the motion before the House is that all countries should take equal steps to combat global warming. And me and my team firmly agrees to this topic. Well, no other issue other than climate change and global warming is a truly global concern. Global warming temperatures are projected to rise between 2.5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit over the next century. According to the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, a group of over 1,300 scientists from the US and around the world have researched and told us about the impacts of global warming. The scope of impact of global warming is difficult to overstate. Everything from wildlife, ecosystems, agriculture, and human health is affected on a global scale. Already, the effect is felt worldwide. A global problem requires a global solution. And when it comes to protecting the environment for future generation, some countries are doing more than the others. I repeat, some countries are doing more than the others. Climate change is affecting every other country on every continent. It is disrupting national economies and affecting lives. Weather patterns are changing, sea levels are rising, and weather events are becoming more extreme. Although greenhouse gas emissions are projected to drop about 6% in 2020 due to the travel bans and economic shutdowns resulting in the COVID-19 pandemic. This improvement is only temporary. Climate change is not on pause. I repeat, climate change is not on pause. Once the global economy begins to recover from the pandemic, emissions are expected to return on higher levels. The Paris Agreement, adopted in 2015, aims to strengthen the global response to threat of the climate change by keeping a global temperature to rise in the century well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The Kyoto Protocol is an international agreement on the climate change developed under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. The protocol encourages 192 parties to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, with many developed nations having binding emissions for the reduction of their targets. The headline results and tells us that between 1990 to 2012, the original Kyoto Protocol parties reduced their CO2 emission by 12.5%, which is well beyond 2012 target of 4.7%. The Kyoto Protocol was therefore a huge success. Key portions of the Kyoto Protocol are set to expire at the end of 2012, but many other world's major greenhouse gas emitters have already set national targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and they are forgiving their own initiatives to meet their own goals. If the countries come together, put forward their ideas, surely they can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Many countries have come together and they're focusing on curbing deforestation and boosting renewable energy sources. Several nations are experimenting with cap and trade plans. Regulators set mandatory limits to industrial emissions, but companies that exceed those caps can buy permits to emit from companies that they have alliances to spare. In some cases, it's not clear that the countries are doing much to meet the state of their climate goals. What is clear that the pledges taken up by the country on the table aren't legally binding, and they fall short of what would be required to stabilize the planet's atmosphere. Steps, once the country put forward their ideas, once the countries come together, steps taken up by the countries they can power their home with renewable energy, invest in energy efficient appliances, reduce water wastage, and they can buy better bulbs and also drive a fuel efficient vehicle. By this, I would like to end my debate by saying that all countries should take equal steps to combat global warming, and I would like to end by a quote, which is there by James Hansen, that global warming isn't a prediction, it is happening. Thank you.
Well done, Nikhil. Some wonderful points there, well argued. Judges, you have access to the score sheets now. Please enter your scores. Nikhil is on the first column on your left.
Those are my final scores, Shubhayu.
Thank you, Meghna. Nikhil, have to give us a couple of minutes. We'll just tabulate the scores quickly and share them with you. Remember, these scores are out of 95. Your scores for rebuttal would be after your rebuttal round for 2 minutes. Natasha ma'am, are those your final scores? May I take them?
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Pooja ma'am, may I take that as your final score?
Yes, sir. You can proceed, sir. That's my final score.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, Nikhil, if you're looking at your screen now, these are your scores after your 5 minutes of arguments. Some wonderful scores there. Very well done. Anshulika, you are up next. Before we start the debate with you, can we get to know you a little better?
I am Anshulika Gupta and I study in class 9th of the OSS. And my hobbies are to write and to read.
Wonderful. So Anshulika, the author, If you're ready with your arguments, we will start your time for the debate now.
Are the world superpowers equal? Are the borders demarcating these nations equal? Are their economies equal? Are the populations of these political territories equal? Are their per capita incomes equal? Then let me ask you, how can these countries be expected to take equal steps to combat global warming? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anshulika Gupta, and the topic for today's debate is, this House believes that all countries should take equal steps to combat global warming. And I'm speaking against the motion. Global warming is the gradual increase in the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere due to greenhouse effect caused by increased levels of carbon dioxide, CFCs, and other pollutants. It causes rise in sea levels and endangerment of certain species of flora and fauna. Now, most countries that produce the maximum amount of greenhouse gases are developed countries who have enough resources at their disposal to help the international lessening of global warming. But consider this, my learned opponents. How will countries who have not enough resources at their disposal to even develop themselves help compensate for the global warming percentage of the developed countries? Let's take Yemen into consideration. With its humanitarian crisis and it being in a civil war, do we really expect the country to pay its dues for the percentage of global warming which it is not even responsible for? There are huge disparities between the world's top 15 carbon dioxide emission generating countries. China creates almost double the emissions of the US, which stands second, which in turn is responsible for twice the level of India, which stands in the third place. Collectively, the top 15 generate 72% of the carbon dioxide emissions. The rest of the world's 180 countries produce nearly 28% of the global total, close to the amount that China produces on its own. Well, people, I question you. If the cause is not equal, then why should the measures and steps taken be? All countries do not possess the same geographical area and diversities, and therefore cannot contribute equally to the environment. The USA has more area and physical diversities as compared to Italy. All countries do not have the same situation of law and order. The peace of a country is a factor on which the amount of resources and the power utilized by a country for helping aid the problem of global warming faced worldwide depends. The poverty levels of the country are also very different. The per capita income of USA is more than that of Comoros. And therefore, don't you think that Comoros would like to spend more on improving its position and per capita income than spending it on helping harness global warming? The USA, on the other hand, is free to spend its resources on improving the situation of global warming. Technological advancement also add to the factors for the inequality of the amount of contribution that can be made by a country towards combating global warming. Examples include China, who is technologically sound and has built an air purifier in Xi'an, in Shanxi province of northern China. I ask, can we expect the same out of Cambodia? In the Paris Agreement, the UN recognized the historical responsibility of the developed countries in causing global warming. If developed countries do not make significant and absolute reductions in their emissions, there will be a progressively smaller carbon space available to accommodate the development needs of developing countries. One often hears the argument that it is all very well to preach about equality, but given the planetary emergency the world faces from the threat of climate change, we must set aside this equality principle in the interests of humanity as a whole. I believe this is a wholly specious and a self-serving argument. It reflects the sense of entitlement to an affluent lifestyle based on energy-intensive production and consumption in developed countries, while denying the even modest aspirations of people in developing countries. Therefore, I believe that all countries should contribute to combating the problem of global warming the best they can, but the contribution can never be equal. Thomas Fuller said, "He that plants trees loves others besides himself." One should take responsibility for one's actions, and I believe so should the countries. With this, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anshulika. That was wonderfully debated. That was Anshulika from the Oasis Dehradun, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see how the judges are scoring you. Meghna, please let me know if that's your final score.
Yes, that is, Shubhai, that is.
Thank you so much, Meghna. Natasha ma'am, is that your final score?
That's my final score.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Pooja ma'am, is that your final score?
Yes, sir. That's my final score. Thank you.
All right, Anshulika, if you're looking at the screen, these are your scores after your 5 minutes of initial arguments. Remember, these scores are out of 95, and you've got some pretty high numbers on the board there. Well done. After Anshulika, it's Tarana's turn. Tarana, we would love to know you a little bit better. Your class, your favorite subjects, your hobbies.
So my name is Tarana and I study in grade 9 at the Oasis, the Oberoi School of Integrated Studies. I enjoy writing poetry and my hobbies include art and music, and I am a state level shooter.
You're a district level shooter?
A state level shooter.
State level shooter, wonderful. So here's watching you shoot some arguments at your opposition.
Yes.
If you're ready with your time, we will start the timer now.
Good afternoon, everyone. The motion on fire today is whether this House believes all countries should take equal steps to combat global warming, and I am here to speak in support of it. Global warming is an evident problem that has been on the rise since the beginning of the 19th century. Let me put this in perspective at the outset. The issue is called global warming, and the name is not unwarranted. We may put up as many borders as we like to separate people into countries. We may even be able to create machines that give us the power to control the weather. But there is a point at which human beings lose control of the happenings of this planet and live at the mercy of the forces of nature. There is absolutely no way in established science that human beings can stop the rotation of the earth. Therefore, winds will blow from east to west, and there's nothing we can do to change that because the atmosphere is not bound to any physical or political partitions we may put up. So at the end of the day, we all breathe the same air, concluding that the polluting emissions of one country will have dire impacts on another. This just says we are all in this together. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change stated, and I quote, "Achieving the goal set to stave off the worst impacts of climate change would require rapid, far-reaching and unprecedented changes in all aspects of society. A society is defined as a group of people with common interest. Doing away with global warming, for most, is a ground of common interest, and so all countries must make equal efforts to do so." Allow me to elaborate this concept with a hypothetical example. Implementing extensive combating measures in India will no doubt be beneficial for the country. But a neighboring country such as Bhutan, which for the purpose of this example has made minimum efforts, would experience only the collateral impact of a positive change. However, if to the north of India, Bangladesh makes absolutely no efforts to combat the problem, then any efforts made by the former will be in vain. But if all three of these countries took an equal initiative, then the rate of global warming in the entire region would reduce. At this point, you may be thinking that I present my solution as if its execution is a piece of cake. It isn't, I admit, but now stop to think why this is so. Briefly put, it's because we can't put our differences aside. Therefore, we must get our priorities in order. Global warming causes dreadful events, from cyclones to droughts. Do we really need more bushfires like the ones in Australia, the ones that killed over 408 million animals? The economies of countries are divided into two categories: underdeveloped or developing, and developed. Not every country is as rich as the other. So one may contradict my stance by saying that not all countries can afford to take the same measures. I will elucidate myself with one simple question. Who said the measures taken must be complex and expensive? Scientists say that we have an average of only 12 years to stop global warming before its atrocious effects become irreversible. However, we are all aware of a certain president who believes the entire concept is just a political hoax. This proves that a country can combat global warming not only with elaborate machinery and expensive development, but also by simply educating people on the matter. Another arising concern is how it's fair to expect everyone to make the same contribution to the solution when not everyone is an equal contributor to the damage. Let's take the country of Tuvalu as an example. Their current carbon footprint rests at 0 empty CO2, and yet global warming has them concerned for the fate of their country. Isn't it also unfair to expect a country like Tuvalu to make 90% of the contribution, while a more positive country does only 10% of the job? Wouldn't it be easier to share the responsibility equally? 197 countries, including Syria, adopted the Paris Agreement, which helps avoid dangerous climate change by limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. The Kyoto Protocol was also put into place for similar reasons. The United States of America has ratified neither. Therefore, if an agreement on paper is an apt solution to this problem, it evidently needs to be more binding towards its signatories. Just like we unintentionally caused global warming, let's intentionally make the efforts to fix what we broke. We need to do our best to sustain this planet, because no matter how many countries we are empowered enough to form, we will always have only one planet. So I'd say we'd rather put our differences and our boundaries aside before life on Earth perishes and these huge walls we worship are all that's left standing. With this, I rest my case.
Well done, Tarana. As a shooter, I guess it's fair for me to say that you hit pretty much the bullseye with those arguments. Let's see how the judges score you. While the judges are scoring, here's a quick quiz for everybody who's attending. Tarana, you referred to the country of Tuvalu. Would you want to take a guess on what is the largest contributor to the GDP of Tuvalu? Which is the one thing that they have that contributes to their country's economy? You guys can keep your cameras and mics on right now until somebody else is speaking. I can see the scores coming in. Meghna, I have your score. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'm done too.
Yes, ma'am. I have your score. Thank you so much.
Shubhavisa, that's my final score.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, would anybody want to venture a guess? Pooja ma'am, is that your final score?
Yes, Shubhavisa.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, let me not keep you in suspense. The country Tuvalu owns the .tv website, the domain name extension, right? So just as India has .co.in, Tuvalu has .tv. So any TV channel, any entertainment company that requires a .tv website has to pay the government of Tuvalu to register themselves. And that is the largest contributor to their economy at the present. Well, Tarana, if you're looking at your screen, just give me a second. Let me just put up your scores. Yes, Tarana, if you can see the screen, these are your scores out of 95 after your first round of debating. Very, very well done. Some high scores there. And Zaina, you're up next. You have seen how your colleagues have debated today. Those are the scores that you are matching up to. But before you start, we would love to know you a little better.
Okay, so my name is Zaina and I'm from the Heritage School, Vasant Kunj. I study in grade 9 and my hobbies are dancing.
Wonderful, Zaina. I think this is the first time we have had all 4 debaters from grade 9. This is fantastic because you will only keep improving from here.
Yeah.
So Zaina, if you're ready with your arguments, we will start your time.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're clearly audible. Yeah.
Okay.
Should we
Yeah.
start your time?
Yes. What we are doing to, okay.
We'll start your time now.
What we are doing to the forests of the world is but a mirror reflection of what we are doing to ourselves and to one another. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I, Zaina Imtiaz, am going to address my point of view on all countries should take equal steps to combat global warming. And this house completely disagrees with the motion. I would first like to ask my opponent, how can he say that a global solution can solve this problem? When we talk about the countries around the world, they all stand on different levels. Like India can't take the same steps as the USA. The steps which are useful for the US wouldn't be the same for India or for that matter of fact, any other developing country. USA or China, both are developed countries. China has invested $83.3 billion on renewable energy, whereas if we talk about India, it's not financially stable and even doesn't have so much money to spend on renewable energy or take the same steps as any other developed country. Addressing environmental issues costs money, and many poorer nations lack the resources necessary to tackle even the most pressing environmental problems. In fact, many of the countries doing the least to protect the environment also rank among the 25 poorest countries in the world. Climate change is one of the greatest challenges facing humanity today. Climate change affects every country and can have devastating effects on communities and individuals. Developing countries are the most impacted by climate change and the least able to afford its consequences. Now, if I talk about some developed countries like USA, Canada, Australia, etc., these countries stand on the same level and are developed, also have the resources as well as exposure. From trading recyclable items for transportation passes to requiring all public buses to be electrical, countries are thinking of creative ways to reduce carbon emissions. Climate change continues to threaten countries on every country or every continent. Here is a look at some of the countries and how they are trying to curb the greenhouse effects. China is a home to some of the world's worst air pollution. China is making an effort to reduce its carbon dioxide emissions per unit of GDP by 60 to 65% by 2030. Copenhagen city, where the total number of bikes outnumbers the total number of cars, has been hailed as Europe's green capital. These countries have a lot of things in common, due to which they're progressing so much. Like these countries are developed, have the resources, money, are financially stable, and also the most important factor is awareness. Secondly, now if I talk about the developing countries like India, Argentina, Bhutan, Nepal, etc., India, it is still facing economic crisis, discrimination, poverty, lack of awareness, increasing population. 2/3 of Indians live in rural areas on small farms with little or no access to electricity. The impacts of climate change, such as drought and pollution, have the potential to devastate lands that these rural farmers rely on for their livelihoods. 70% of the population uses stoves that burn firewood and dung. These stoves release smoke into Indian homes, contributing to greenhouse gas pollution and putting the villages at a risk of diseases, including lung cancer and pneumonia. Nepal, which is another developing country, in Nepal, climate change is responsible for drastic yet often erratic changes in seasonal water availability, resulting in drought conditions and increasing flood rate. This was all about how the developing countries are struggling and they need to take some steps with the other developing countries to combat climate change. Now coming to one more important point opposing the motion, which is the underdeveloped countries like Myanmar, Somalia, Sudan, and many other countries. There's a clear link between a nation's wealth and its ability to protect the environment. So it's no surprise that less than 2% of land in Iraq is protected by the government, among the least of any country in the world. Environmental challenges in the country are also product of several recent wars, poor land use planning, and the destructive human impact on unprotected, fragile ecosystems. Currently, the country faces water quality and shortage issues, poor soil, and ecosystem deterioration. These problems are expected to only get worse as a result of global warming. This hence sums up my debate. I would like to end by saying that all the countries around the world are not on the same level because they differ from each other in terms of growth and development, population growth, awareness about the harmful effects of global warming, the stability in economy, resources, and exposure. And I would like to close my debate by saying a quote: saving our planet, lifting people out of poverty, advancing economic growth, these are one and the same fight. We must connect the dots between climate change, water scarcity, energy shortages, global health, food security, and women empowerment. Solution to one problem must be solution for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zaina. Wonderfully done. Let's see how the judges score you. some really great arguments there. I love the way you split the concept of equality between developed and developing nations.
Thank you, sir.
You have my final scores?
Yes,
Shubhayu?
ma'am.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so those are my final scores.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Shubhayu, so that's my final score for Zaina.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, Zaina, if you can see the screen, that's a very high scoring first 5 minutes of arguments, and you still have your 5 marks from the rebuttal yet to come.
Thank you so much.
Contestants, all of you can see the scores because I'm going to remove them now, and they will come back on your screen only at the end of all 4 rebuttals. Right. So Nikhil, we will start the rebuttal with you. We'll go in the same order. You have 2 minutes. Remember, you're not rebutting the opponent's school, but you're rebutting the opponent bench, which has one of your schoolmates and somebody from the opponent's school, right? I hope you've made a note of the points. And if you're ready with your rebuttal, we will start your time now.
Good morning. Good afternoon, dear adjudicator, my worthy opponents, my fellow teammates, and to one and all present here. I would now like to move on to the rebuttals. So, the first speaker, you said that China is doing much for themselves. And well, if ma'am, I would like to tell you, if China can help themselves, if they provide money to the other countries, if they help out the other countries, then what's the harm in that? If they help the other countries, all the countries will help them in future if they need help from those countries. If you said that some countries do not have space, so they cannot help in reducing global warming. Well, ma'am, if they do not have space, they can give ideas they can give ideas and solutions to other countries so that they can stop global warming, they can reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and that can also lead to a huge success. Well, you also talked about Paris Agreement. Yes, ma'am, Paris Agreement did not lead to a harm in the global warming or in the greenhouse effect. Well, it led to a huge success. A Paris Agreement, which was adopted in 2015, which aimed to strengthen the global response to the threat of the climate change, was reduced. It was not increased, it was reduced. And ma'am, in such situations like global warming, situations like greenhouse gas emissions, and also COVID-19, well, in such situations, countries can help other countries by providing them ideas, by providing them space to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Now, I would now like to move on to the second speaker. You said, second speaker, climate change does not get affected, but helps the countries and the people. Well, ma'am, if countries put forward their ideas, if they can just think about providing solutions to other countries by providing them space, by providing them money, they can lend them some money and take it afterwards. Well, if they help the other countries, then what's the harm in that? And you also mentioned in your speech that literacy does not connect with greenhouse gas emissions. Well, ma'am, if the people are literate, they can provide ideas, they can provide solutions to the other countries to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. By this, I would like to end my debate. Thank you.
Well done, Nikhil. Very categorical rebuttal of both the speakers in the opposition bench. I like your style of doing that. Anshulika, you're up next. Do we have Anshulika on camera?
Good afternoon, everyone again. I don't believe that neighboring countries should contribute equally, as my opponent stated. Like example, let's take India and Bangladesh. Their resources, resource management, GDP, national income, per capita income are quite different. So I ask again, can we actually expect these two very different countries to contribute equally unless they stand at an economic equality? It thus proves my point that countries cannot equally contribute in combating global warming. Saudi Arabia and Thailand have very different economies. They're dependent on various economic activities such as climate and area. And their natural resources are quite different. So they cannot produce equal results when it comes to harnessing global warming. We are all aware of the political situation in Syria And ask yourself, can Syria contribute equally as Denmark can to harnessing global warming? My opponent said that Paris Agreement led to lowering of global warmings. Let me tell you that the carbon dioxide emissions reached a record mark in 2016. In the next year, after 2016, Paris Agreement was signed. I ask, let's take an example for this. If an electricity bill comes for the entire city, should the rich and the poor be asked to pay a like amount of money? Why should the poor pay for the amount of electricity that a rich person uses? I don't understand it. Why should countries equally contribute when their resources are so totally different? My opponent also mentioned that some countries are doing more than other countries. This is due to different resources and the different reasons that they have. Some countries are not fully economically developed for that. Some countries do not have other priorities like fixing their per capita income to a developed country's standard. This just further proves my point that all countries do not have equal resources, whether it be it GDP, economically, per capita income, be it economy, be it their social reputation in the world. Therefore, all countries cannot equally contribute towards harnessing global warming. Thank you.
Thank you, Anshulika. We often have this problem in debating where you have too many ideas, too little time. But judges, please note that Anshulika did step over the 2-minute mark there. Please do keep that in mind when you're marking her. Pooja ma'am, if I can have your marks as well, please, for her before I move on. Thank you so much. Tarana, you're up next. We've had 2 rounds of rebuttal. If you are ready with your time, we will start with you now.
My fellow opponent stated that every country should get to decide what measures it takes based on its economic status. There are people who aren't educated enough to know what steps to take. Example, presidents of certain countries. So we can't guarantee that they'll take any steps at all. And at a time like this, when it comes down to life and death, we can't afford that possibility coming to life. Secondly, my fellow opponent stated that developed countries produce more greenhouse gases than underdeveloped or developing countries, and also stated that countries should contribute as much to the solution as they do to the problem. I would like to factually contradict you. Saudi Arabia, which is considered to be an underdeveloped or developing country, produces 20 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases. Australia, on the other hand, which is a developed country, produces 533 million metric tons. So if we talk about countries contributing to the solution as much as they did to the problem, then Australia would contribute less than Saudi Arabia despite being more developed or developed at all. So Australia is more financially able, but Saudi Arabia is making more efforts. In hindsight, would it not be more beneficial for both to contribute equally and shoulder the responsibility equally? Thank you.
Well, Tarana, well within time. Wonderful example there. Let's see how the judges are scoring you. Judges, if you could please put in the scores for Tarana. Meghna, have your score. Thank you. Natasha ma'am, have your score as well. Thank you. Pooja ma'am, have your score as well. Thank you so much. Zaina, just like last round, you have to bring this debate to a close. Let's see what your rebuttal points are. If you are ready, we will start your time now.
So, my opponent said that when all the countries come together, they should use renewable energy. My dear opponent, as I said earlier, China had invested $83.3 billion in renewable energy so that they could give it to all across the country. There are many countries, are developing or undeveloped countries like Somalia, Sudan, Iraq, or even India. They can't afford renewable energy. These countries are developing, and some of them are also undeveloped, and they struggle with their economy and many more social issues. My opponent also said that Bhutan, that my opponent also said that who said to take expensive measures? My dear opponent, at the state of global warming which we are at is very high and wouldn't be solved by taking small measures. At this level, energy needs to be changed to renewable energy. The gas stoves need to be changed, which are in India or any other underdeveloped country. The farmers which are working need new agriculture equipments, and the most important thing, they need awareness about what are the harmful effects of global warming. They wouldn't know how to use new agriculture equipments which are used in America. If we implement them in India, the farmers wouldn't know. They need awareness, they need education. And more importantly, India wouldn't be able to afford those agriculture equipments or even the renewable energy. This is very easy to be said than to be done. India or any other developing countries can't afford these things, as well, like China or even for Copenhagen. I said they are said to be grow 100,000 trees by end of 2025. If we implement such kind of things in India or any other developing country, it wouldn't be that easy, because more than 40% of population in India is uneducated. So they wouldn't know why are we doing this. So I would like to say that these things are more easier to be said than done. Thank you.
Well done, Zaina. Global warming, a problem that's perhaps solved, easier said than done, is what Zaina says. Let's see how the judges are scoring Zaina's rebuttal. Meghna, I have your score. Thank you. Pooja ma'am, I have your score as well. Thank you. Natasha ma'am, I have your scores. Thanks for that. This is the time when I get to play the evil moderator. I will make you wait a little bit for your scores, keep you in suspense, while we bring to you some other messages. It is now time that I tell you about Notebook. Notebook is an EdTech app. Like many other learning apps there, we provide videos tailored to your curriculum so that it makes your learning more fun, more enjoyable. The one place where Notebook stands vastly different is that we make short videos tailored to every topic as per your textbook. That means when a teacher is taking a class, they find it easy to start off with a notebook video and then take the rest of the class. And when you are at home, you have access to a laptop or a smartphone, you can check out the videos. So let's say 6 months down the line, when you have a terminal examination, you can check out the videos just at the morning of your examination to kind of refresh your memory. What I will do now is show you a short clip from one of the notebook videos for you to know exactly what I'm talking about.
Why did Akbar choose Abul Fazl to write the Akbarnama? He knew that Abul Fazl was an independent thinker, powerful debater, and a learned man, well versed in Arabic, Persian, Greek philosophy, and Sufism. Fazl also opposed the view of the conservative ulama, so Akbar appointed him as his advisor, spokesperson, and his official chronicler. Abul Fazl worked on the Akbarnama for 13 years and produced 3 books or volumes. Akbarnama provides a detailed diachronic and synchronic description of Akbar's reign. Akbar was a secular ruler who wanted to keep his empire free from religious orthodoxy or rigidity. In Ain-e-Akbari, Abul Fazl has described the heterogeneous culture of the Mughal Empire, where Hindus, Jainas, Buddhists, and Muslims lived in peace. Abul Fazl wrote Akbarnama with ornate or flowery language, with a stress on diction and rhythm. These texts were often read aloud in court. The Emperor Shah Jahan commissioned Abul Fazl's pupil Abdul Hamid Lahori to write the history of his reign, called Badshahnama. The Badshahnama is the official history in 3 volumes of 3 decades of the Mughal Empire. The 3rd volume was completed by the historian Muhammad Waris. After these court chroniclers and historians, the British administrators who ruled India began to create an archive on knowledge about the Indian subcontinent. The Asiatic Society of Bengal, which was founded by Sir William Jones in 1784, edited, printed, and translated many Indian manuscripts like the Akbarnama.
Well, that was a short clip from Notebook. We are very fortunate to have with us today Achin Bhattacharya. Achin is the founder and CEO of Notebook. I will invite Achin now to tell you a little bit more about Notebook and also to give his feedback about the debating he has heard so far. Achin, if you're there.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. We saw some real good performance today. Very impressed with content, delivery, and amazing self-confidence of all the participants. What I like most is the passion for public speaking that I see in all four of you. Anshulika, Tarana, Zaina, and Nikhil, very well done. I'm sure that with passage of time, all of you will only get better and better from here. You all are the future torchbearers of our civil society. And it's wonderful to see such awareness on relevant and contemporary issues in all of you. To me, all of you are champions, irrespective of who wins today's debate. It's good to win a battle, but it's more important to win the war. And in this case, the war is against this global pandemic, which has thrown life out of gear, with children stuck at home for months together. It's important to stay positive and keep the spirit of our children high. And this has been our objective behind organizing Zero Hour, an international platform for schools and schoolgoers from different parts of the world to connect and compete with each other, with an objective of promoting public speaking. We really want our future generation to be more vocal and confident so that every Indian in each corner of the world is articulate enough to match up to anyone. Soft skills are as important as domain knowledge, if not more. For any role in any organization in future, beyond middle management, focus is very often on soft skills as domain knowledge is given. I also thank both the adjudicators, the principals of both the schools, and the esteemed teachers who have worked hard in mentoring these bright young stars. I congratulate the proud parents, great performance by all the contestants. So every reason to feel proud for you. I also thank the audience for their active encouragement and support to all our young debaters. It really makes a lot of difference. I look forward to see all of you in our Together for Education webinar today at 5 p.m. My best wishes again to Nikhil, Anshulika, Tarana, and Zaina for the future. Thank you, take care, and goodbye. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you so much, Achin. At the Zero Hour debates, we are also very proud to have partnered with Save the Children Foundation. Save the Children is an NGO that's over 100 years old. They work across the globe to save childhoods. Often, a lot of children in different parts of the world live in inhospitable environments that are hostile to them, and their childhoods need saving. Let's hear from their CEO, Ms. Bidisha Pillai, who we were very fortunate to have at our webinar a few weeks back, about how Save the Children is saving childhoods across the globe.
Save the Children was born in 1919. 100 years is not a milestone that many organizations or individuals can claim to have reached. And for us, it's been a tireless, relentless journey to ensure that every child has access to their rights. Every child has a voice. But when we look back at 100 years, because 100 is also a time to reflect, we wonder what it would be like to live in a world where children don't need to be saved. Perhaps we could live in a world where Save the Children does not need to exist. And so as we look at the future, we envision a world which is much kinder to its children. A world in which children no longer need to be protected from violence. Where children are not needlessly dying before they turn 5. Where every child is going to school, is learning, is playing, and is on that path towards fulfilling their full potential. As we turn 100, we pledge to work towards that future of a much kinder and brighter world for children. Every day, every hour, every minute, we will continue on that path. But we also know we can't do it alone. We want to work closely with the communities, with our partners, with the government, and most importantly, with the children themselves. They are going to be the change makers of tomorrow. Children like Onuyara, like Rahul, like Salman, like Mamta, They are the ones who are breaking gender stereotypes. They are challenging social norms, and they are changing the world and the lives of themselves and also children around them. We pledge to continue working with them, alongside them, to ensure that every child gets the right start. I'm Bidisha Pillai, and I invite you to join Save the Children in our commitment to ensure that every child gets the right start.
Well, with those messages, we are now back to the debate. I have kept all of you in enough of suspense, and I'm quite sure the participants hate me by now. So, these are your final scores out of 100 after your 5 minutes of initial arguments and 2 minutes of rebuttal. Nikhil, you're at 84. Anshulika, you're at 81. Tarana at 83. And Zaina, you are at 90. These are your scores out of 100, which means these are the school averages as they stand now. The Heritage School Vasant Kunj, 2 speakers, 84 and 90, you're at 87. The Oasis Dehradun, your speakers at 81 and 83. The school average stands at 82. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the audience here comes in to choose. The audience, you have the power to vote for the best speaker of the day. You get to choose who has been the best out of these 4 speakers, and it's going to be a very, very fine choice to make. The school which has the best speaker of the day gets 25 additional points added to their average score. And that clearly is going to be a make or break, because the points difference between the 2 schools is really small. So audience, if you can see the screen, you will see a poll appear on the screen now. You will have to choose one of those 4 names. You will have 1 minute to place your vote, and the voting starts now. The contestants can see the votes coming in. We're about 25 seconds in, and about 80% of the people have voted. This is why we request every school to bring in as many friends, as many supporters as you want, because not only can they support your school at this voting, but it's very important that students get exposed to this level of public speaking. It's unbelievable that these 4 students are from class 9. Just a couple of more seconds and we are done. Those, ladies and gentlemen, on your screens are the polling results. In the the joint third place, Anshulika and Nikhil each with 16% of the votes. Zaina with 21%, but Tarana wins this one with 47% of the votes. Very, very well done. What this means is the Oasis Dehradun gets 25 points added to their score, which brings their total to 112. Let me quickly do the addition. While I'm tabulating the scores, Meghna, if you would want to give some closing remarks, I believe you've heard some fantastic debating today.
That's right, Shubhayu. Thank you so much. All I have to say is that it's truly unbelievable, as Shubhayu said, that all these participants are in class 9. So I would like to congratulate all the participants from Heritage School and Oberoi School of Integrated Studies. I have been completely bowled over by you, your debating skills. It's been truly mind-boggling. Today's topic has been a sensational one, and I'd like to mention a few points. This is a topic which is very dear to my heart, as I've been a student of economics, and I'm feeling compelled to make a closing remark. Global warming transcends country borders, and we stand the risk of being globally affected by carbon emissions from around the world. However, there's worldwide disparity on opinions on whether every country should equally engage in curbing carbon emissions, simply because global contributions to carbon emissions differ by country. I think some of these points have been already raised by Anshulika and Zaina, contestants against the motion. developed nations are way ahead of the developing in terms of the contributions made by way of carbon footprints. Scientific sources from as late as 2017 suggest that US and China are on the top of carbon emission charts. Without numerical figures here, let me say that India's carbon dioxide emissions are about 1/10 of that of US. So given such disparities and the fact that developing countries struggle to manage their own resource constraints, burdened with huge population pressures, lack of infrastructure, it's natural that the responsibility would have to be borne on a per capita basis rather than gross figures of emissions. So even with the China-US example, China is the biggest overall emitter of carbon dioxide as of today, but US has a higher measurement on per capita emissions. So that should, I guess, give some light on the topic for you all. Once again, with that said, I would like to convey my thanks to the audience, especially for making the 0 hour sessions so vibrant and interesting. A special thanks to the school principals and who have both been so meaningfully supportive towards this cause, and all the debaters who have so very magnificently displayed their public speaking skills. With that, over to you, Shubhayu. Thank you.
Thank you, Meghna. And those are the final results. The winner of match 15 of Pool B, the Oberoi School of Integrated Studies, OSS Dehradun. Congratulations are in order. The team from Heritage, please do not lose heart. For a class 9, as I said early on, I could not imagine doing this debate in class 9. We hope we have made you research, we have made you read a lot of articles, and we've made you a little more aware of global warming, because really, this is one topic that everybody needs to be very, very aware of. Both the sides very, very well debated. For the team from OSS, you have some celebrating to do. I believe some places in Dehradun are now open where you can go and have yourself an ice cream. And I suggest you do that by maintaining the norms of social distancing. It's been a fantastic afternoon of debating. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you in our Together for Education webinar, which starts at 5 o'clock today, India time. Until then, take care and goodbye.